Hello and welcome to the Life After Diets podcast. I'm Sarah Dosanjh, psychotherapist and author of the book, I Can't Stop Eating.
And I'm Stefanie Michele, binge recovery health coach. If you feel out of control around food, we get it because we've been there.
Thank you for joining our conversations about how to make peace with food and feel more comfortable in our bodies.
Now on to this week's episode.
Hello, Stefanie Michele.
Hi, Sarah Juliet. I remembered.
You did remember.
Because I love the name.
So we've got a bit of a different episode this week where we are speaking to Katie Thistleton, our first guest on the show.
Yay! We spoke to her last week. I admit we're recording this post-interview. So we're curious to hear what you all think of us having a guest and having a third voice and a third perspective on the episode. And write us in, and when you're giving us a rating and review, nice ladies worth a listen, just let us know if also you appreciate these interview episodes. Or not interview. We didn't interview her. We talked with her.
Yeah. Smooth nudge about the ratings, by the way. I like that. I think a big part of what we wanted from bringing guests on is we want to have people on who are willing to share their stories and share their struggles and things that they've learned, because hopefully that's what's going to be useful for people. But I'm guessing there are probably some people out there who don't know who Katie is. Certainly people outside of the UK are less likely to know Katie. Have you ever heard of, or do you know what CBBCs is?
Like BBC. I know what BBC is.
CBBCs. Do you remember Katie talking about CBBC?
No, I do not.
So CBBC is children's BBC. So Katie started off as a children's television presenter, and now she does some radio and bits and bobs on television as well. And she has a show on Radio 1 on Sundays called Life Hacks, which she hosts with Vicky Hope. And they've invited me on a couple of times. So Katie's been instrumental in helping us get the message out there about dieting and how problematic it can be for some people.
Yeah. Well, she said that she's always voting for bring Sarah back. Let's talk about binge eating again on her show. So, I know I had never known about her. I didn't know about her until I listened to your radio show one time. That was, my first. And then I started to follow her on Instagram, and she was so fun. She's so just authentic. I felt just speaking with her, and she's very honest and very vulnerable in her sharing. And
that's what I've really appreciated, is that she's on this journey and she's still unlearning this stuff, as are many people listening to this. And that's what I really liked about Katie and why I wanted to bring her on, because I feel like she will be relatable to people. And she's a northern lass, so she's just down to earth and chatty and just really, like you say, a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we hope you enjoy the episode and let us know what you think. And here we go.
Okay. I'm just gonna go for it then. Ready? Okay. Hi, Katie.
Hi, guys.
Thank you so much. What did you say?
I said, hi, Katie.
Oh, that's already. Can we do that again?
Yes.
We'll get your voice in, Stef, as well. Okay. Hi, Katie.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Just leave it. Just go. We'll never do it right.
No, we will. It's just like which order we're doing.
Well, Sarah, you say hi. Stephanie, you say hi, and then I'll say hi.
Okay. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, guys. How are you doing?
We are good, thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on. We were actually saying earlier how we're feeling a little bit nervous about having a guest on, because we've never had anybody on the podcast yet. But you do this. Well, you do this all the time, so you're a radio presenter. So what we thought we would do is get you to run the podcast today, and we'll just follow your lead.
You're not kidding, though.
You don't need me to do that.
So, Katie, one of the reasons why we approached you first to come on the podcast was from an Instagram post that you put up at the end of December. Do you remember the post that I'm talking about?
I do remember the post. Yeah, I was being a bit reflective about diets.
And I love it. And you wrote it in the notes section of your phone as well. And I don't know, I love posts like that. It looks like
there was too much to say to like fit it in an Instagram post. So I had to do that. It was like, this post is too long. I was like, oh, wow.
Well, it's lucky that we've got a podcast, because we can make everybody listen for as long as we want. So I thought maybe I would start by reading the post back to you. Have you looked at it since you put it up?
I haven't actually, no.
Okay, well, just notice what comes up when I read it back to you. This is Katie speaking on her Instagram. Here I am with my yearly post about food and my body to remind you to lose weight off your resolution list and just feel the relief wash over you. Instead, make a list of things you struggle with emotionally and find ways to work on them. When people used to say on here that diets don't work, I used to think, what are they talking about? Of course they do. If only I could stick to them, eh? And it took me a while, some counseling, reading about binge eating, and following the right people on social media to realize that is the problem. Of course, you'll drop weight if you eat less and move more, but you'll eventually give up, put it back on, and torture yourself all over again. I had a few epiphanies over the past few years about my relationship with food, and one of them was realizing I didn't ever put weight on holidays. People would always say how they put on half a stone on holiday. For our non-UK listeners, that is about 7 pounds. I didn't. I think I ate less on holiday because I ate what I wanted when I was hungry. I wasn't binge eating through stress or boredom because there wasn't stress or boredom. I wasn't telling myself I needed to lose weight for the holiday anymore, and therefore dieting and then binging out of panic of future me depriving myself. The same thing happened post-wedding. This is what made me realize why diets don't work and why we'd be so much better off living in a world where we didn't bring what our bodies look like into our food choices at all. Because on holiday, I allowed myself to just do what I wanted and didn't feel the need to binge. Unfortunately, that's not the world we've been brought up in. So we've got some undoing to do.
It sounds great when you read it. Although it is really intimidating you reading it, because you guys actually know what you're talking about with this sort of thing. And I'm there on Instagram, like making it sound like I've got all the answers and I know what I'm talking about.
No, but that made me think, what was the journey from you first seeing a post like that talked about diets not working and feeling like, no, they do work, it's just me doing it wrong. And then getting to this point to being able to post it, like how long did it take for that to evolve or marinate in your own mind so that you were able to even post this and feel like you did know what you were talking about?
God, yeah, very, very long time. It's taken a long time to get to that realization. I think I would follow the right people on social media and go through phases where I would like unfollow all the fitness models and instead follow sort of body positivity people. And I would see these messages about like diets don't work, slimming world doesn't work, and I would think, well, what's the answer then? Like if you need to lose weight, of course you're going to have to go on a diet, you're going to have to eat less. So I used to think, well, that's obviously not true. And it has taken ages. And this is why I'm so passionate now about saying to people, work on the emotions. And it takes a while and we want quick fixes, but it has taken so many mental breakdowns of me being devastated and crying, trying clothes on and crying at photos of myself, so many diets, failed diets, so many conversations with friends and family, counseling, listening to podcasts like this one, reading books, all these. It's taken so much work around like binge eating for me to realize that. And it was that holiday thing, I think, that was a real like epiphany for me. I think maybe I was reading a book or listening to a podcast or something, and somebody said something about it's not working. And I thought, yeah, I've always noticed that actually, whenever I would go on holiday with my family and my mum and sister would be going, oh God, I think I've put half a stone on with all this food. And I would think, I don't put on weight on holiday, I stay the same. But I realized that when I'm on holiday, it's like you do nice things, you sort of potter about. Like I went to Paris with my husband just after we got married in November, and it's like we get up, we have a bit of breakfast, and then it's like we wander around, get a little bit of lunch, maybe I'll get like an ice cream or something. But because in my head I'm going, I can have whatever I want because I've given myself permission because I'm on holiday. If I want, I can eat everything in sight. I didn't actually want to. I just ate when I was hungry, and I'm just eating when I want to eat. It was just the weirdest like epiphany.
I really related to that part, Katie. When I read your post, that was so me. I can remember going on holiday with friends, and at the end of the week they'd all be complaining about how much they'd eaten, and I'd be thinking it's nothing. But I think Stef might have had a slightly different kind of perspective or experience of this. Is that right?
Well, yeah, because holidays were a time where my body image became more front and center. So rather than looking at going away as a time to be present and enjoy and just give myself permission, I felt like now my body feels more on display, like being in a bathing suit. And I also used the holiday as a time to restrict because I was binging so much in my normal life that when I was away, it was like, okay, now that I'm around other people and I can't escape and eat in secret, like I have to really be on. So my vacations would be much more fraught. Like they felt harder for me to get through. when I noticed my difference actually was when I was pregnant. Because when I was pregnant, it was like, I need to nourish the baby. I have permission to eat foods. And that was sort of my similar epiphany. Is I noticed, like, why during my pregnancies was food much more of a non-issue. I mean, it was never a non-issue, but it was this relaxation of expectation around food during certain times where your brain's like on board with you not having rules around it, that all of a sudden changes the charge around it. So
That's
I can
really
relate to it in that
interesting.
way.
Yeah.
I definitely like felt the pressure for holidays, and I like every holiday I've ever been on, I would, really desperately try and diet, and I'd do that thing where I'd basically panic 2 weeks before. Now I'm gonna have to go to the gym twice a day and really, really restrict. But then once I got on holiday, then I would just relax with it and be like, eat what you want now. So yeah, it's really interesting. And realizing that for me was just like, we go on family holidays to Florida where you just eat burgers and ice creams and donuts for 2 weeks, because I'll go to a restaurant, I order what I want, and then I just stop eating when I've had enough. Whereas in my day-to-day life, if I go to a restaurant or have a takeaway or something, I'm like, get it all in, because you're not allowed this tomorrow. And Sarah, when you came on our Life Hack show and you said about the Last Supper thinking, that just, I tell everyone who listen about that now. And I think we all sort of know that we do that start a diet on Monday, eat loads on Sunday thing. But the thing that you said to me that was so groundbreaking and game changing was that you stay in that mindset all the time. And I realized when you said this on the show, I was like, oh my God, another epiphany. I'm constantly in my head going, at some point, you've got to sort yourself out and lose weight, whether that's Monday, whether that's next. At some point, you've got to stop eating like this. So then my head is constantly going, eat it all now, eat it all now, eat it all now. And like, that's just constantly subconsciously going on in my head. And when you said that, I was like, oh my God. And I've been chatting to a friend about it recently. She's a makeup artist from CBBC, and honestly, all we spoke about, I think, for about 5 years when I was in that makeup chair was our weight. Like, I'd get in the chair, she'd go, how are you doing with your diet then? I'd be like, oh God. All we spoke about, because we were both obsessed with the fact that we'd put weight on over the years. And she's done every fad under the sun. She'd be coming in on keto or some shake diet. She had this little thing put in her ear, which was like, honestly, she's done the maddest stuff. It was like a little pin in your ear that you twist whenever you're hungry, and it's supposed to stop cravings. I mean, we laugh about it. She won't mind me saying this, because we laugh at how ridiculous half of these things are that she's done. And we enabled each other, really, because she'd be, I'm trying this diet. I'd be like, well, I'm trying that. And then I saw her a few weeks ago and I told her about this sort of Last Supper thinking, and she was like, oh my God, that's me. So I never actually lose any. I'm constantly telling myself, you've got to go on a diet. I never actually go on the diet, but I constantly have the Last Supper.
Yeah.
It was another complete epiphany moment for me when you told me about that.
Yeah, the brain is wired. Yeah, right. Like it doesn't matter if you're on the diet or you're just predicting that the diet's coming. The brain is like, we understand that is the same thing. We know the threat is there, so we might as well just get it in now.
It's like you're an animal that's going to go and hibernate for the winter and start to stuff your cheeks with stuff your cheeks with all the nuts because you're going to be hibernating.
Well, my question was, because you were talking about this friend and the industry you're in. Like, how does it work? Even post January 1, when you're posting this idea about the new year, how has it evolved in your industry and feeling like, okay, I'm not going to try to restrict anymore and diets don't work in an industry that may very much encourage that behavior, and it might feel like you're really swimming upstream. I mean, it does anyway, but in that industry in particular, how do you handle that?
I think it's definitely come on a lot, which is really great. I think there's probably some parts of the industry maybe that, I don't know, I can't really speak for it, but if you're a model or something, I imagine that there's still quite a toxic environment there, but it has come on a lot. I mean, I had a really awful boss in a TV job years ago who would say things to me like, oh, this must be your dress because there's nobody else who's that size here. And once described my stomach as a vulnerable area on me, and said that I looked better when I wore tops that kind of covered that area. And that is madness, absolute madness, and certainly something that wouldn't be tolerated now. And eventually that person was kind of reprimanded for it. And I think they were maybe the last of that generation. I don't think there's a lot of that going on now. I think it's changed a lot. And I think I'm noticing that because of who I follow on social media as well, though. I think my feed used to be very heavily I followed all the fitness people, all the weight loss people, people on Slimming World posting their meals. That was what my feed was. And now my feed is full of binge eating therapists, you know, people like yourselves and body positivity campaigners. And because of that, it's changed how I feel about it. It's made me think it is okay. And you know what, whenever I wrote a Psychologies article about binge eating, my relationship with my body, and posted that, and I got so many messages from people in my industry, from other presenters who sort of privately messaged me to say, oh my God, like this is how I've always felt, you know, reading that sort of really helped me. So I it's better. It's definitely come on a lot. Like I went to an event last night, for example, and it was an event full of like presenters and influencers and stuff. And you know, not everybody there was a size 0. That there are like a lot of influencers now who are respected in their field, who are in bigger bodies. We've still got a long way to go. We've still got a long way to go. You don't see somebody in a really big body on TV very often, but I think it's definitely improved. I still sometimes though feel a bit of shame around it. I used to feel a lot of shame when I was at CBBC. I felt like all the other presenters were really healthy. I remember like they'd come in and their meals would be so healthy, and that, you know, they'd be having fruit for breakfast and salad for lunch and stuff, and I'd be having a packet of Quavers for my breakfast at 8:30. And I used to feel a bit of shame, and I think I sometimes still do when I'm around my presenter friends and they're being really healthy and they're in much smaller bodies than mine. I sometimes do feel a little bit of shame, but I think it's come on a lot.
Well, restriction can look like health. And there might be people, I'm not saying they're necessarily restricting, that might be their natural inclination towards that kind of thing. But I've definitely been there in that comparison place where seeing what somebody else is having and then thinking,
Yeah.
And I also, it's funny, I never felt shame for how I ate when I was thin. So, you know, when I was a size 12, a size sort of like 10 to 12, I didn't feel like having Quavers for breakfast was something to be embarrassed about. You know, I'd laugh about it, joke about it, you know, oh God, my diet's terrible. People go, oh, where'd you put it? You know, since putting on weight and feeling conscious of my size, I now don't want to eat those things in front of people. It's so funny, but that is how you feel. You feel like you'll be judged based on your body, not, you know, we've all got that friend that's like really skinny and just basically smokes and eats crisps all day, and they're like really tiny, and I feel like that's sort of joked about. But if you're a bigger person and you're seen to be eating those things, people think, oh God, so unhealthy. You're never judged for being unhealthy if you're thin. That's just madness.
Yeah, it's the way we've learned to view health and thinness as like one and the same. So we're not differentiating between them as much as we pretend to be, but we're not. And I think it's also speaks to the way we objectify, like when we're eating in front, or not even eating in front of someone, but when we're in front of people, it's we take the objectified lens of ourselves. Like, we don't think about how we're feeling and how we're experiencing that moment. We're thinking about, how do I look right now? How does this look to other people right now? How are other people seeing this and interpreting what I'm doing? Because I think we live in such a culture of look at, judge, like, you know, and that's what we're essentially doing to ourselves all the time. And that's taking away from our lived experience of being inside of our bodies and just existing and moving through, you know, eating
Really
what are Quavers?
I grew up with a friend who was bigger than me growing up, and she used to hate eating in front of people. And I sort of have this specific memory of us like eating a Greggs in town, and some boys that we knew coming over, and she just put this Greggs away immediately, and I carried on chomping down on my sausage roll, and I was like, what, why don't you like eating in front of people? And now I completely get it, because they weren't, you know, I was thin and they weren't going to think anything of me with this sausage roll, but they might have judged her, and she felt that way. And I never understood it, why she didn't like to eat in front of people, and now I completely get it.
And whilst I agree there is a lot of judgment out there, I think it can be magnified. And I think Steph and I, we often end up in this little dance with each other, because she'll be like, yeah, everyone's judging. And I'm like, no, they're not thinking about us. They're not
you're thinking about yourself. No one thinks that anything about you or worse than what you think about yourself. I've said the worst things about myself in my head. I'm horrible to myself about my weight, but I highly doubt anyone else is thinking that about me when I think realistically. You say the nastiest things to yourself. So I think, yeah, like you say, that you amplify that, you kind of project that out, and you think that's what everyone's thinking of you, and they're probably too busy worrying about themselves.
Did that self-talk shift with the moving away from dieting, or was it still quite loud?
Yeah, it has shifted. It has shifted, definitely. And I think, again, a really big part of that is following the right people on social media. It's something that we sort of preach about all the time on the show, you know, curate your feeds. It can be like a magazine. Instagram's like a modern day magazine. It can be your interests and the people you look up to. But I think I underestimated how much of a negative effect those images were having on me. I think I thought I was above it. I think I thought, oh no, I understand social media. God, I understand that just looking at skinny bodies isn't going to, you know, make me think I need to be skinny. But actually, no, we're not that smart. If you are seeing these images all the time, it does get into your head. But I only noticed how much it was when I changed that, when I started following loads of the right people and you know, people of different races and different sizes, and people showing their body hair, and people showing their stretch marks, and just general body diversity on my feed. Once I started seeing all that, I realized that my perception of beauty changed, and the way I looked at other people changed, and then the way I looked at myself did as well. It's so powerful, and it sounds really simple. It sounds like it's too simple, but it's so effective. You can't underestimate how powerful images are.
Well, it's not conscious because it's an image and it's not being processed through the language center. It's just not conscious. And so I encourage people to notice, how do you feel when you get off of social media? Really paying attention. When you've spent 10, 15, a couple of hours scrolling through social media, kind of checking in, because I can even feel it now. And I thought, I was talking to people not that long ago going, yeah, I don't feel like I really compare myself to people on social media, because everyone that I'm following is got these messages that are great. But do you know what? Sometimes, you know, Steph will do a post and I'll be like, oh, that's a really good post. And now I feel like what I've got to say isn't as valid. And it's really interesting, like about anything, whether it's body image, whatever it might be, to look out for this. Like, how is it that you feel when you come off of social media, when you stop scrolling?
Yeah, completely. I think now I feel much more positive when I come away from a social media. I think it's one of the reasons that TikTok is so good, actually. I mean, TikTok just knows you better than your own family know you. Like the way that algorithm works is so powerful. If you're liking the right things and unliking the things that you don't like. When I first got it, I thought, oh, this app is awful. It's toxic. The videos that were coming up, I was thinking, I hate these. And saying to my friend, how can you like TikTok? She was like, it's brilliant. What are you talking about? And then I started to like things and do the dislike, when they do the little thing where it says, I'm not interested in seeing this. And now the algorithm just works perfectly for me. And it's just sort of funny sketches and dogs, essentially. And before it was kind of like toxic stuff. And it's so powerful. Like you say, I think I thought I was above it because I thought, oh, I'm educated about these things. Like, it's the young people that we need to worry about. Like me, I'm 32 and I work in this world, so I know not to, you know, be taken in by posts. But like you just said there, Sarah, with the science behind it, you can't choose it. You're just flicking through all of these images, and it changes how you feel about the world.
Are you on TikTok, Steph?
I scroll it, but I don't have a presence there myself. I just go there for my own fun.
I don't put anything on. I just scroll through it.
I've never used it. I've been told how addictive it is, and I just don't trust myself.
Don't need another addiction.
I don't trust it.
It's very addictive. Like, I just procrastinate so much at night. My other half will go to bed. He'll be like, you coming up? And I'll be like, yeah, just down there another hour, just scrolling through TikTok. I actually met a guy last night that does TikToks, and I was so starstruck with him. He's done this one about a grapefruit that like went viral, and I was just shouting across the room, is that grapefruit guy? And he was like, yeah. Like, I was more starstruck with him than I would be, like, you know, A-lister.
So last year you got married, Katie. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
What was it like? Because I've had a few people ask me questions about that pressure leading up to something like a wedding, and because you mentioned afterwards that relief as well. And what was that like for you to be back in the spotlight, you like, with the body image stuff?
Yeah, do you know what? Thank God it's over. It was brilliant. It was the best day ever. But when I think back, it was really stressful building up to it. And I think I've just realized that, you know, certain things, you've got to protect yourself, haven't you? And if you're somebody who struggles with binge eating, there are certain things that are just massive triggers for you. For example, I did Veganuary last year, a couple of years ago. In fact, it was 2020. It was a pandemic year, because I remember then we went into lockdown. I was like, oh, I wouldn't have wasted a month of no Nando's if I'd known like Nando's was going to shut. I wouldn't have been vegan for January. But even that, and, you know, I would love to be vegan for, you know, for the planet and for the animals, of course. But anything that involves me having to be really strict around what I eat, I know is just such a trigger, and triggers that Last Supper mentality that we were talking about. And the wedding was a big sort of trigger, because it's just all anyone's obsessed with is you're going to lose weight for the wedding, shredding for the wedding, all this. People are just obsessed with it, and you stress so much over this one day of your life. And you know what? I felt a massive relief when it was over, because I was allowed to eat again, like I said in that Instagram post. Oh, and I obviously I didn't lose loads of weight because it doesn't work, as we've discussed. And you know what? I do look at some of the pictures. Sometimes I look through these photos, and there are some really nice ones, but I do look through and think, oh God, these are my wedding photos that I've got forever. And I that internal voice is going, oh, you've let yourself down by not being thinner on your wedding day. So it's something that I still struggle with. And I think, again, there's just so much pressure put on how a woman looks on her wedding day. It's one day. I was like, well, what if I just get a massive spot, or like norovirus or something? Like, it's one day. It's insane how much money and effort is put into that. I did end up actually going for an eyebrow wax, and it burnt off half the skin around my eye. And I was just like, well, there you go. You can plan for these things. And then that just happens.
Well, it's so interesting, because it's like the expectation and the responsibility is to be a thin bride. It's like, otherwise you're a failed bride. And it's this idea that, like, I post on my stories images of all diverse body sizes, and sometimes I'll just do like a day of brides in diverse body sizes, because we need to be seeing more imagery of, like, why is a thin bride a bride? You know what I mean? Why is that the goal? And that becomes, you're either failing at that or not. And it takes over your journey of getting married. Like the fact that we feel such relief, because I experienced the same. And when after my wedding I was like, thank God, now I can breathe. And is that like, how sad is that in a way? And looking at the photos and seeing and feeling like all you're seeing is, could I have lost more weight there? I mean, just this idea of like shunning that idea, and the rest of the world might not be doing that. But for me, I wish I could go back in time, because at the time I was very deep in my binge in eating disorder and body image. And I believed, thin was better. And now, it's like, what a shame. What all these years that I've been looking at photos and feeling like, like disappointed in my photos, and understanding that there's a new way I could look at that now. And I hope my kids, like can adopt some of that, where it's like that part of this society isn't taking over the entire experience of getting married.
Yeah, it's so right. I watched a lot of Say Yes to the Dress in the run up to the wedding. And I think that they're all very different. The American one is a little bit different, I think, but the Lancashire one that they film near me, I actually went to that shop to get my wedding dress, and they were absolutely amazing. And the same theme comes up every single episode. It's just all women who hate how they look. And it was really sad to watch, because I thought, God, this is just every woman's experience when she's getting married, standing there trying the dresses on, having a cry, usually about weight or maybe about something else with their appearance. And then all these people in the room just loving them so much and crying with pure joy because they've seen them walk out in a wedding dress. And I just thought, God, how sad. All these people just love them, so they're so loved, and their preoccupation is that. There's also a show called Curvy Brides Boutique, which is on TLC, and I watched a lot of that in the run up as well, again trying to change my perception of what a bride was. But I don't know if you guys ever did this, but I look at bigger bodies sometimes and I think, oh yeah, well they look great, but it doesn't look good on me. I think, oh, they look, but she suits it. She suits being a bigger girl, but that doesn't look good on me. So it didn't really work, because I was like, oh, again, they look great, but I'll look awful.
Yeah. Everybody says that. It's so common to hear that.
But I really wanted to acknowledge, Katie, you'd been doing this work for a while, but that pressure, not being immune to it, even knowing that trying to diet doesn't work for you, that pressure, I think I'm saying this because I speak to people they're feeling guilty that they're still being kind of caught in it. Even though it's like your higher thinking mind might be like, I know that my wedding day is about this, and I know that it doesn't matter, and the people that care about me are this, but being able to just rationalize this stuff away, I think isn't possible for a lot of people because it goes so deep. But I wanted to say that one to you, but also to the listeners who might have listened to all the episodes of the podcast and still find themselves being sucked into it and think, oh, I'm not doing very good at the not dieting thing. It can swing the other way.
It's really hard to get out of these habits, isn't it? I'm just trying to get out of talking about it, talking about diets, talking about weight with anyone, with friends. Like, as soon as a friend starts talking about wanting to lose weight, I change the subject. I'm really trying hard to get out of that. And something else that I'm trying to get out of and find myself doing all the time, almost like it's a sort of obsessive compulsion, is counting calories in my head. I mean, I just know the calories in literally anything. So speaking of TikTok, there was a TikTok trend that was about someone holding a gun to your head. I won't shoot you if you do this. And somebody shared it with like, name the calories in every single food, and basically saying I would walk away free because I know the calories in every food off my heart. And I'm like, that's me as well. That is a binge eater all over, isn't it? That's somebody with an eating disorder all over. So in my head, I just know all the calories. So I will go, right, I had a bagel for breakfast, that's about 300. And then lunch had this, and I start doing the counting up that I've been doing for years. And that's another habit that I'm trying to get out of.
Well, Steph, you've spoken to this before. I don't know if you want to quickly say how because that was something that was big for you. It wasn't quite as big for me, calorie counting.
Oh, it was huge for me. I couldn't stop counting if I tried. I stopped my MyFitnessPal and actually documenting it or writing it on little papers in my, on my nightstand or something. But I still was doing it in my head, just I couldn't stop. But I actually recovered through that. It didn't stop me from recovering. It was just that I stopped having a cap. It was like, well, I guess it adds up to this number today. And it wasn't about like, oh no, it was just like, okay, that's data, but I'm not doing anything with it. Yeah. Like, I think that was just how I had to do it. And eventually, and I'm talking like years in, it faded. And there's times where I still remember, I mean, I just know it's imprinted in my brain how many calories things have. And so I know, and sometimes I'm aware, but it no longer is like, it's not something I'm trying to do. Like it's just like, oh, that is that many. And I guess I'm eating a lot right now. Like that's just what that is, but I'm not on a mission.
We're not going to avoid seeing calories, are we? I mean, these rules are coming in that they're going to be on all the menus in all the restaurants, so that neutrality with it, I guess, is kind of what you want to aim for. You want those calories not to go either way for you. It's funny. I've noticed so many interesting things about the way I eat as well through, again, like I said, listening to podcasts, seeing your posts, Sarah, and reading books on the subject, like that sort of distraction eating. So I always go on my phone when I eat and I scroll through the Daily Mail app, speaking of things that you shouldn't do.
Do you have that, Steph? Do you know what the Daily Mail?
I know what it is, but no, I mean, it's not.
The showbiz pages, they're addictive. And again, I think I'm above it. I'm like, I know how this works. I know they're talking rubbish. I take it all with a pinch of salt. But a bit like I said with the Instagram pictures, those things will definitely be getting into my head. So I could do with kicking that habit. But I'll go on Instagram or something, but I will scroll through my phone whilst eating with the telly on. I'm sat next to my husband. He's eating his food, just eating it, watching the telly. I'm eating my food, watching telly, scrolling through my phone. It's become a real habit. So much so I start eating something, I just go for the phone straight away. And that's something that I think I need to get out of. I also hate eating around people, and I suppose there's two reasons for that. One is obviously you feel judged, and if you want to binge, then you don't want to do that around people, so you want to do a bit of secret eating. But actually the main reason is because I don't like anyone to talk to me when I'm eating, because I'm like, this is my sacred experience and I enjoy it so much. People talk to me when I eat. My husband sometimes is like, you're right. I'm like, yeah, I don't like talking when I'm eating. I just want to be in this, like, it's like you've snuck off to your room and started shooting heroin or something. It's like it's like this little addictive, obsessive little, this is my fun food time. So much so that I've even, before now, I've been in London and a friend said, do you want to get dinner? And I haven't, because I would rather eat in the hotel on my own. And that's another habit that I've noticed. I'm really picking up on all of these things now that say a lot about my relationship with food.
Well, it's ongoing, isn't it? There's still areas of my relationship with food that I'm working on. And there's something, isn't there, though, that, and you've obviously seen the post that I talked about it, but that splitting between eating and a phone or a screen. And it's interesting because you said like television, phone and food. There's something that I notice myself doing now, and I always feel rubbish afterwards, is watching television whilst playing a game on my phone. I feel like I'm almost just splitting myself into parts. I haven't really spoken about this before, so I'm struggling to articulate what it is. But there was a meme that made me laugh. It's like talking about how proud you feel of yourself when you put your phone down to pay attention to the TV. And really spoke to me, because I'm like, yes, I do feel like that's an achievement.
It's so true. That there's a meme that always goes around that's like me on my phone whilst watching Netflix so that I could stop a single thought from entering my head. And that's what we're doing. We're blocking out, and you're on your phone, you're blocking out, and when you're binge eating, you're blocking out as well.
Yeah. For me, it's something that I do when I'm feeling tired, and what I need to be doing is resting. So I feel like there's something for me around tiredness and this splitting. I don't know. Can you relate to this at all, Steph?
Yeah. I think for me it's transitions. Like I have a hard time transitioning from like doing something to not doing something. And I'd rather be like doing passive stimulation. I think like taking in TV or scrolling through something, to me, it's like a way of downgrading, because I can't just go into stillness or like sitting down and paying attention to something if I've just come off of like a day of work or come in the house or something like that. It's just I need more nuanced downgrading. So it's like, to me, it's like a way of like and even eating can be like that. It's just like all these other sorts of passive stimulation that help me like, okay, now I'm transitioning into the next activity. That's how I use it. We love connecting with our listeners, so we host regular community events on Zoom. We also have a private Facebook group for our Patreon supporters. Please visit our website, lifeafterdietspodcast.com, to find out more.
For more details about how to contact us or to work with Sarah or Steph individually, please check out the show notes. Now let's get back to the episode.
I know there's a thing in binge eating, isn't there? I don't know if maybe I've seen this on your post, Sarah, or not, where they say how you eat is often how you do everything. So it's probably better than that, but I am quite manic as a person. So before we started recording this podcast, then I said I'm hungover today. I think we need to do binge drinking rather than binge eating. And I never drink from at home or anything, so I can take or leave a drink. But when I do go out, I drink too much. And when I exercise like an absolute beast and go manic with it. When I sleep, I'll sleep for 12 hours. I think I do everything quite excessively. And I'm very loud and talkative, and I like a lot of stimulation. So I think I'm just doubling up, tripling up the stimulation when I'm eating my food and I'm watching telly. I also need to be on my phone as well. It is like I sort of need that chaos around me, and I eat chaotically as well. I can sink drinks and I can inhale food like it's just gone. I wish I was one of these people who could just eat like a little sparrow. Some people are just so sort of dainty with the way they live, but I'm not a dainty person in any way in life. So it's hard for me to be like that with food as well. I've even noticed, though, speaking of the telly thing, certain TV shows will make me want to eat because I usually eat when I watch them. And I was watching a lot of Selling Sunset on Netflix when I was staying in London, because my other half, he watches all the trash TV with me, but that one, it was a step too far. He wasn't interested in watching that. So I would watch it whenever I was away in hotels in London on my laptop, and I would always get the same Nando's order. And then one day I was watching TV and a trailer came on for Selling Sunset, and it was like I could taste the chicken. Like I just immediately was like, I need that Nando's order. I'm so Pavlov's dog. Is it Pavlov's dog? It is, isn't it? It's unbelievable. Somebody mentioning a word. I'm a marketer's dream as well. If there's a Kit Kat advert on, I will have one later that day. Just somebody dropping a certain word or mentioning a TV show that I watch when I eat. That craving just comes immediately.
Yeah. The associations in our minds, but also with that show, there's so much less than feeling that from shows like that, where there's just these like highfalutin people who are, it just, to me, when I watch Bravo or any of those shows, all of a sudden I feel like I'm not good enough. And I'm like, oh, and like that triggers, like that'll be like more of an association as well.
I always joke that one of my favorite things to do is eat whilst looking at thin people. And that is essentially what you're doing when you're watching that program. I'm like, I'm stuffing my face watching all these beautiful women.
I don't know if that's coincidence,
in bodycon dresses, and I'm scrolling through the Daily Mail looking at bikini photos while shoving a bag of mini eggs into my mouth. And that's something I used to always joke about. Oh, my favorite pastime, eating and looking at thin people.
Yeah, but it's because maybe there's a part of your brain that's like, oh, well, are you not feeling not good enough, or you feel like you might need to get like them? Is there some thread of restriction in the subconscious?
Yeah, definitely. And also a feeling, I think, of, oh, well, I'm always going to be like this. I'll never look like that. Might as well, that kind of might as well just stuff my face. And I think I've been back and forth with that all the time with diets as well. I go through phases of, I need to lose weight, and then, oh, but it's fine. Like I've been following loads of body positivity people, and actually it's fine. I'm happy in a bigger body. I'm back and forth all the time.
Yeah. I really relate to the associations thing. I think that is so strong for me. I started swimming again about 6 weeks ago, something like that. And do you know Ollie and Steen, Katie?
No.
Oh, it's a bakery. I think it's Danish, and there's a few of them around London and maybe in other parts of the country, I don't know. But they do these cinnamon slices. I was actually telling Stef about these cinnamon slices earlier, and I think I only did it, maybe I did it twice after my swim. You know, after a swim, you feel tired and always feel extra hungry after a swim. I went and had a cinnamon slice, and then the third time I went for a swim, I was barely out of the changing rooms before my mind was like, you have to have a cinnamon slice.
Yeah.
And I noticed it and I thought, okay, this is interesting because I'm on the verge of setting up a habit here. And I don't want this to be a habit because that kind of strength of wanting for me just feels too close to compulsion. It's like, I want to be able to eat cinnamon slices, but I don't want to feel like every time I go for a swim, I have to manage this really strong urge. And so I caught it early. But once for me, a pattern like that is established, it's difficult for me to let it go. And I always remember as a kid swimming and then afterwards going and having an iced bun. So I wondered if maybe there's even something earlier with this association with swimming and then having something like just sweet and doughy.
Yeah, definitely. You used to always go to the vending machine after swimming as a kid. There's something about swimming makes you so hungry as well. But I'm the same. And I try now, if I see a habit popping up. So I also go through so at the moment it is mini eggs, but I'll be off that in a couple of weeks, and then it might be Rolos, and then it might be Kit Kats, and I go through phases and I eat that thing all the time and then get sick of it and go on to something else. And I'm trying to mix up now. I'm trying to be like, okay, let's not get the same thing a few nights in a row, because you're creating a habit, like you say, and I so easily get into those habits. I got into a habit of, on a Sunday after my radio show, getting a takeaway for me and my other half, and that started to become a real habit for me as well. So I totally get the habit thing, and it is amazing how just certain associations, TV shows is a big one for me, definitely.
Before we wrap up, I just had a question. Have you noticed, since coming around to this and sort of giving up diets, and even since the post on Instagram, that any of the obsession feeling or the shame has decreased giving that up?
A little bit, but it's a work in progress. I always say, like, I just want to eat like a normal person, in inverted commas, which obviously makes no sense, because I don't think there's hardly anybody in the world who has a completely flawless relationship with food. I think most people have some sort of issue with food, whichever direction that might be. But that's what I'm really struggling with. And you know what, when I'm feeling like I haven't binged, I feel really good about myself. But when I feel like I have binged, I do struggle with that shame. It's like I feel like it's written all over my face. Like, everyone on the train will be like, oh God, she's out of control. That's an internal shame that I cope with. Like, me being bigger and me binge eating is a representation of me as a person as a whole. That is an internal debate I have a lot.
Yeah.
And Stefanie, this is obviously something that I don't know if you have children, Sarah, do you? No, Stefanie, this is something I'm sure that you are thinking about. Is like, how will I bring up my kids? Like, what is the right answer? Because I know that bringing them up to be aware of diets is not the right answer. You've got to educate them. How do you do that? And sort of teach them about health without putting these toxic messages into their heads that were put into our heads when we were growing up. And that's why we've struggled.
Now, I have 3 girls, and one of the things I've noticed about them is that when I don't interfere, they eat varied, as long as these things are available. Like, we have varied foods in our house, all sorts of things, and they eat vegetables and they eat chocolate and they eat all these things, and they sort of self-moderate. I mean, not entirely. There's times where, like, my 4-year-old definitely would eat like chocolate for dinner if she could, and if it was there, but there's also plenty of times that she asks for broccoli, like she does, because it's something to eat in our house, and so it's modeled to eat a variety of foods. And I think what I focus on with them is the relationship that they have with food, and not about what they're eating and how much, but how I'm talking about it. And if I'm not demonizing anything, and if they understand that fun food is is good, or I don't know, I don't want to use good or bad either, but that fun food is okay, just as any food is, that it's about this relationship and how we're assuming, that we are not good or bad for eating. And too much, when I say too much, they're like, well, then give me more. Same way we would, like if don't eat too much, it's they're learning that the way that we respond to that as well. And so I try to, it's hard. I mean, there's so much ingrained that we feel like, oh, but I have to, I have to intervene. And it's
I feel like I grew up in a generation where everyone was on diets, your mum was on Slimming World and Weight Watchers and the Special K adverts are on TV. And it's so hard because it's like that thing of like, we grow up associating those certain foods with a treat, don't we, and a reward. And that, how do you deal with that? Because you are going to have birthday cake just on your birthday,
Yeah. Actually, I saw a post recently that was like, you can have birthday cake any day of the year. No one's checking.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I saw one similar. It's like, you could just go into a shop at any point and buy a birthday cake. Like, it feels illegal.
No one's coming to get you. Yeah.
It feels illegal, but it isn't. Yeah, it's really interesting. And wow, you've got 3 girls. So, in particular, especially with girls, such focus on women when it comes to their bodies and how they look. But I find that fascinating because the reality is this food is addictive, not just because of the it's because of the sugar content and everything, isn't it? It tastes really good. We would all eat it constantly if we could. So it's a minefield, definitely. It must be hard to strike that balance as a parent.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, because I feel like I think the addiction idea comes in when we feel like we can't have it, right? And that sugar tastes good and it's pleasurable. But I used to feel like I was addicted to sugar. And I would binge on it all the time, but I don't anymore. You know what I mean? So like, there's a way that I have it and enjoy it and like, oh, this is delicious and I love it and it tastes wonderful, but I don't need to keep binging on it anymore. So I think there's a relationship between what we feel we have true permission around versus what feels forbidden and how that makes us feel addicted.
So one thing though, before we wrap up, that you asked a question, Stefanie, and I think we skipped over it. I think you asked what Quavers were, did you?
I did.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
I didn't hear. So yeah, they're crisps, a cheesy maize snack, and they're like in little curls. So they're like, they're
like a Cheeto?
No,
but we have What's-Its, and that's like a Cheeto. They're cheesy, but they're like rather than a little sausage thing like a Cheeto, they're like a curl. It's really hard to explain.
I know.
I'll Google it.
I'm glad Google it. I'm glad you took that one, Katie, because I was like, they basically they vanish in your mouth as soon as
they like dissolved. Do you have skips in the States? No, okay, that's a similar thing. I've mentioned that example because there's a meme that goes around and it's the picture of MyFitnessPal saying, what have you had for your breakfast? It brings up a notification, you've not logged your breakfast, what did you have? And it's someone just put in Quavers, now F off. And when I saw that, I was like, literally, I used to have Quavers for breakfast, and that's not a substantial breakfast food by any standard.
But I genuinely haven't eaten them for years, and Katie, you talking about them makes me want to go and get back.
So I want a pack as well now.
So yes, when I eventually come to see you, Steph, I will bring you some Quavers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I can have. There's an equivalent, I think, that I understand. I'll look it up though. I need to be sure.
Yeah, please do.
Actually, are they called Quavers because they're supposed to look like the notes, music notes?
Oh,
Quavers.
Maybe that makes sense.
I mean, they don't really, but okay. Wow, Katie, thank you so much for joining us and for being so open with your story and being really honest about where you're at as well. I really appreciate it. We don't want guests that are coming on and going like, I used to struggle with food and now I have all the answers. You came on saying you didn't have the answers, and that was why we wanted you to come on, to just share your story and experience.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Any time, always happy to chat about this. It has become my passion now, as it has for you two as well. I'm just so interested in this topic, and I've been doing so much work in sort of mental health over the years in the media. And we're a long way off changing things in regards to people with eating disorders, aren't we? It's just opened my mind, it's opened my eyes so much to how we're set up for failure, basically, when it comes to food. It's unbelievable. So yeah, there's a long way to go, but thank you to both of you for doing all your work, because genuinely, like Sarah, finding your Instagram was just a game changer for me. That's why I wanted to get you on the radio show. I would do that every week, by the way. I'm always like, should we do binge eating again? Sarah on, we've not done binge eating in a while, have we?
you just find different topics, so it would then be like a body image week, or
Exactly. Well, I think it's always worth doing around those trigger times as well. Like, January, we had you on January, didn't we? Because that's obviously a big diet month.
Yeah.
Oh, I get so sick of it. That's why I did that post, because it's exhausting just looking through, isn't it? Seeing everyone go, oh, diet starts tomorrow. Ugh.
Well, we need all these voices. So thank you for being one.
Thank you so much.
Fade to black.